Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Kiana Valentine on behalf of the California State Association of Counties. Happy to have the invitation to have some of your time this afternoon to talk about the other side of what's going on with the price-based excise tax decreases, and that's what's happening to cities and counties statewide in California. As we have testified numerous times before you in this committee and other committees, cities and counties own and operate over 80% of the maintained miles in the state. We are a critical component if you're going to build and provide a multimodal, safe, efficient, effective transportation network for the state that meets the mobility of all users and all different types of communities. Cities and counties are having to make the same very difficult choices that the CTC and regional agencies are going through right now with respect to their local maintenance programs. Recall again, cities and counties get 44% of the price-based excise tax revenue, and that the gas tax revenue generated at the statewide level is a critical component to an overall local transportation budget. A rough estimate indicates that cities and counties have been dealing with and will continue to deal with a hit of $740 million in the past couple of years, and that will carry through the 15-16 fiscal year. And of course, as we look at projections in coming years beyond that, it doesn't look like the trend will be reversing anytime soon. So like Mr. Dunn and Mr. Higgins, I will not air grievances, but I would hope to use my time before you all today to share some stories that I've gathered from local communities represented on this committee and of course throughout the entire legislature. CSAC asked our counties and heard from Del Norte at the top of the state all the way down to San Diego at the bottom, and practically every county in between about the very real and very immediate impacts this reduction in revenue is having on their communities and the mutual constituents that you all serve. Since 2014, again through the budget year, counties and cities, that $740 million total will result is actually translate to a 78% loss from that revenue stream. 78% loss in just 3 fiscal years. That has tremendous impacts. So how does that hash out in terms of the numbers? In 14-15 counties collectively received $337 million from this revenue stream. And with the BOE memo now in hand outlining their intention next week to reduce the rate by another 2.2 cents, starting July 1, counties are slated to only receive $76 million in fiscal year 16-17. This sort of loss not only impacts maintenance programs and projects, which is we will likely hear from the CTC. I was privy to Executive Director Kempton's presentation last week at the California Transportation Foundation. This has more than single-year project impacts. It's also wreaked havoc on some locals' abilities to provide even the most basic public work services, such as snow plowing, tree trimming, and the cleaning of ditches and culverts. These basic activities are fundamental to ensuring the safety of motorists, especially during the El Nino conditions, albeit this past week has been a little blip of warm weather. CSAC just visited Trinity County. I see Senator McGuire nodding his head, so no doubt this story has probably made it to him. Yes, in rural mountainous Northern California to learn firsthand about how these vital services, are vital to the health and safety of the public. Very briefly, over the course of a 24-hour period, I think there was over 80 downed trees and a very major snowstorm rolled in. It was over Christmas Eve, and it impacted the ability of an ambulance to get to a resident in the rural part of the county. Luckily, the medical emergency wasn't life-threatening. Nonetheless, it took the ambulance nearly 12 hours to get to this constituent. The woman had broken her hip and was still in need of medical attention. And so despite all of the efforts of the Trinity County Public Works Department, their road crew is a quarter of what they need just to be able to plow roads on a regular basis. Despite all of the efforts, the sheriff, police forces, it took 12 hours to get an ambulance to this woman. And to be clear, the ability to provide those basic services that I'm talking about relies on a stable and robust funding for transportation. This reduction in funding is felt by local agencies of all sizes too, not just rural counties. I'll turn to Senator Wajkowski as I highlight some of the impacts Alameda County has shared with us in the past weeks. The reduction in the price-based excise tax funding will greatly impact their delivery of needed transportation capital improvement projects, which impact public safety, accessibility, goods movement throughout the port, and job creation. It's also resulted in a severe reduction in their pavement rehabilitation program that will result in continued deterioration of the local street and road system and add to the list of deferred maintenance projects. Response to and cleanup of roadway hazards and emergencies such as mudslides, fallen trees, and/or road shoulder failures will be delayed, resulting in county roadways being closed for indefinite periods of time. Without safe, direct route to travel, emergency response vehicles will be detoured around the closed areas, adding extra response time and life-threatening emergencies. Further, these extended road closures will also have economic impacts felt throughout the county and the region. Alameda will also lose grant funds due to the lack of local match that they use to leverage state and federal funds, resulting in project suspensions, cancellations, and penalties. Alameda County will suspend much-needed safe routes to school sidewalk improvement projects and will force children and their parents to continue to walk in the street, jeopardizing their safety. The project suspensions will result in increased construction costs due to inflation as well. They will suspend rural road safety improvement projects that will result in a continued risk of rural road accidents, even in what we would consider an urban county. Every urban county in the state has rural areas, including Los Angeles County. And so these rural road impacts are going to be felt statewide as well. A drastic reduction of trash and debris removal, which will result in almost 500 tons of garbage being left along the roads and flood control channels impacting neighborhood health and wellness. I think this is, again, particularly enlightening in the context of El Nino conditions, because the debris in the roadways will cause storm drains to clog and flooding onto local streets and roads. Finally, the county reports that with a substantial portion of its operating budget being lost, they will be forced to dramatically reduce staffing through employee layoffs. So there is some of the economic impacts as well. Other counties have indicated similar impacts. Los Angeles County reports that because of the current and projected revenue drops, they have postponed infrastructure improvements with contract value estimated at over $61 million. The great majority of this work is on pavement preservation and restoration of the roads that they own in their jurisdiction. The real impact, however, is not as simple as a single year-to-year drop in revenue, but rather a compounding effect of multiple years of revenue reductions. For the County of Los Angeles, a 2-year, $54 million revenue decrease projected over 5 years equates to $135 million less available to invest in the maintenance of aging streets and roads infrastructure. To address the current and projected revenue declines, they have already reduced transportation staffing by 27 positions, and if current funding trends continue, will likely have to have further layoffs as a result. Riverside County has reported reducing projects by the following: 20 less miles of road construction, 52 less miles of road resurfacing, 80 less miles of slurry chip sealing, and 150 miles less seal coating. While I'm not sure the difference between a slurry seal and a seal coat myself, I do know that what it ultimately adds up to is more deferred maintenance and higher costs in the future. Finally, I'll add San Diego has indicated that they have already reduced various road maintenance and rehabilitation treatments on 82 miles of county roads. Considering the forthcoming anticipated BOE reduction, the county will have to reduce those applications by another 25 miles and then continue that trend into the future. Again, this is just a small smattering of the local data that we've tried to collect in the past couple of weeks to inform you all at this hearing and throughout the special session. We hope to be following up with each of you and every single member of the Senate and in the Assembly in the coming weeks with a fact sheet on the specific STIP cuts that are going to be occurring in your counties and cities and region, and the local street and road impacts as well. Again, on behalf of California counties, I thank you for your time today to be able to share these stories with you. I cannot stress enough the immediacy of our current transportation funding situation. Even before gas prices started to fall, we have to remember that we were still facing a combined $135 billion shortfall on the state and local street and road systems. The reduction in price-based revenue is only exacerbating an already monumental problem. And in order for cities and counties to be able to provide our mutual constituents the basic services critical to their health, welfare, and safety, we need more revenue. We need it now. The longer we wait, the more challenging it will be to fix in the future. Thank you very much.
The gas tax swap presents a very volatile situation of revenue for not only the state, but for local government and all these projects. How can you plan a project if your revenues keep popping up and down on a very radical basis? Of course, we've experienced that in the state general fund, radical up and downs, such as I think, you know, like 10 years ago to now, we've gone down and then up again in our general fund. The swing of like almost $30 billion a year, just swinging back and forth. The volatility of the current system, to avoid these kinds of volatilities that we have in the gas tax revenue, the price-based gas tax, two options. One is to do the smoothing kind of method, the 3-year smoothing. Second one is just to go back and convert the sales tax-based gas tax to a just a flat gasoline excise tax, and with some kind of inflation. Which is the more stable source in your opinion? And do you have an opinion about that? Those are two ways of solving the problem.
I believe capping the rate or setting the rate at a stable level, 17.3 cents, 18 cents, would provide you the most stability in revenues in future years. That being said, I do think there are some advantages to the 5-year smoothing you've proposed within your SB 321. That is, over time, we've done an analysis of gas prices in the past 30 or 40 years. I'd be happy to share this analysis with you. That shows over time, the price of gas has risen, maybe not as steadily, but more than inflation has. So if you were to smooth a funding source based on gas prices, I think over time it would generate more, but again, it's still going to have some of that volatility, even with smoothing built into the process. So I think a set rate is more stable, but there are benefits to the other option as well.
You said there are over 30 counties in the state of California who have, for some reason, or whatever reason, or maybe no reason, decided not to adopt a self-help formula to help themselves with transportation projects, maintenance, and road repair. And aren't we being asked as a legislative body to put a tax on those people when they've decided not to tax themselves?
Yeah.
Did I miss it?
No, Senator, I agree with your frustration in sort of parsing out those that have chosen to tax themselves beyond the statewide tax and those haven't. But a few thoughts on that. I think, as we all recognize, the 2/3 voter threshold is challenging in any area of the state and becomes particularly challenging in those areas that have yet to adopt. As Bill mentioned, there are 15, 18 aspiring self-help counties that would like to put something on the ballot and achieve an additional revenue stream. Another thought is, when we've analyzed in what jurisdictions would a self-help actually help, I think there are a handful of jurisdictions that they don't have a large enough population base that it would actually produce any real revenue. Alpine County comes to mind. I can't remember. It's a really small number of people in the entire countywide area. 2,000 people. Yes, very small. So that's another thought. I think another approach that we've all been discussing in the past 18 months now that could be helpful is the idea of a state-local partnership program to incentivize voters to go to the ballot, to pass additional self-help measures recognizing that that could open them up to additional state funds and make them more competitive.